The stage was set. Ann Coulter, known for her sharp tongue and relentless facts, went head-to-head with Whoopi Goldberg on The View. What started as a routine discussion quickly escalated into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in daytime television. Whoopi came armed with her usual arsenal of race-baiting rhetoric. But Ann brought facts, composure, and an unshakable resolve that left Whoopi and the entire panel reeling. It wasn't just a debate. It was a showdown. And trust me, you don't want to miss how this one ended. It all started when Whoopi brought up Ann's latest book, clearly expecting to corner her on the subject of race. "Ann," Whoopi began, her tone dripping with condescension, "you've been pretty vocal about race and politics. Care to explain what you really mean in this book?" Ann leaned back, unfazed, and responded calmly, "Absolutely, Whoopi. What I mean is exactly what I wrote. Liberal policies have done more harm than good for Black Americans, and race-mongering only divides us further." The room went quiet. Whoopi's signature smirk faltered.
Was good for who?
Yes, because you had millions of white people watching with the equivalent of what in New York we used to refer to as the Brooklyn juries, who simply would not convict even guilty Black criminals.
But instead of addressing the point, she immediately launched into an emotional rebuttal, accusing Ann of oversimplifying the complexities of race in America. Ann let Whoopi finish, but her response was nothing short of a masterclass in dismantling rhetoric. "Whoopi, if you're going to talk about race, at least get your facts straight. You just claimed liberal policies have helped, but let's talk about the real impact. Welfare dependency skyrocketed. Crime rates higher than ever in Democrat-run cities. These aren't opinions. They're facts."
Not innocent Black
Hold up, Ms.
criminals.
Coulter. Please stop. Please stop. If you're going to talk about race, at least know what you're talking about. At least know what you're talking about. Well, tell me how much you know about being Black.
Well, this isn't
And how
about being Black.
Well, but you just said you just made all these statements about how Black people feel. Tell me how you know that. Yeah, you did.
Whoopi, visibly agitated, shot back. "And what do you know about being Black, Ann? You can't possibly understand." Ann's reply was swift and brutal. "This isn't about me or you, Whoopi. It's about policies and results. The numbers don't lie, even if you'd like to ignore them." The audience gasped. Whoopi's usual tactic of playing the race card wasn't landing this time. What followed was a back and forth that could only be described as verbal chess. Whoopi attempted to pivot the conversation, bringing up historical injustices and accusing Republicans of perpetuating racism through the so-called Southern strategy. But Ann was prepared. "Actually, Whoopi," she said, holding her ground, "the Southern strategy is a myth. Republicans were winning in the South long before that narrative was spun. And let's not forget, the first Black congressman? Republicans. Look it up." The silence in the studio was deafening. Whoopi, now visibly flustered, tried to regain control. "So you're saying Republicans are saints? Give me a break."
I need you to tell me what you're trying to say in this book. Because we don't know what you're trying to say.
What I'm trying to say is race-mongering has been very bad for America. Liberals use it to promote causes that have nothing to do with Blacks and, in fact, harm Blacks. And that excellent lead-in you just gave about O.J., I mean, I think that was the moment, having lived near New York City in the 70s and 80s, which was the golden era. It was like Trayvon Martin and Duke lacrosse case every day. With the O.J. verdict, white America said, that's it, the white guilt bank is shut down. And that ended up being the best thing that ever happened to Black Americans.
What are you talking about?
I meant that no longer...
Being acquitted was good for who?
Yes, because you had millions of white people watching with the equivalent of what in New York we used to refer to as the Brooklyn juries, who simply would not convict even guilty Black criminals. Not innocent Black
Hold up,
criminals.
Ms. Coulter. Please stop. Please stop. If you're going to talk about race, at least know what you're talking about. Well, tell me how much you know about being black.
Well, this isn't
And
about being black.
Well, but you just said you just made all these statements about how black people feel.
It's not a book about black people. It is a book about white liberals. And I do know, and this is a fact, that once for years, Republican policies on crime and welfare, for example, were called racist. When they finally got implemented, after the O.J. verdict, I might add, by crime Giuliani in New York, Reagan and Bush judges overall, tens of thousands of black lives were saved. That is a fact. I don't have to know about being black.
No, Anne replied, her tone unwavering. I'm saying liberals have exploited race for political gain while offering no real solutions. 5 minutes after the Civil Rights Act, everything became a civil rights issue, from abortion to homelessness. How does that help black Americans? The audience, typically quick to applaud Whoopi, seemed hesitant. Even the panel looked unsure of how to respond. By this point, Whoopi was visibly frustrated. She interrupted Anne repeatedly, trying to derail the conversation. But Anne stayed on course. You keep saying this is about race, Whoopi, Anne said. But what about accountability? What about policies that actually uplift communities instead of keeping them dependent on government handouts?
Because your facts are just a little shaky. I mean, you're saying that because black people, because liberals are what? Because liberals have abandoned black people now because what? I don't get it. I don't understand.
I don't think liberals ever cared about black people. I mean, 5 minutes after the Civil Rights Act of '64, they start calling everything that has nothing to do with black people a civil rights issue. Abortion on demand, homeless rights.
So are you saying that liberals don't care about black people? Then are you saying Republicans embrace us in a warm, fuzzy blanket?
We're not embraced back. But yeah, we tried to.
So wait a minute. So the Southern strategy was a white liberal thing? No, it was a Republican thing.
No.
And also, Newt Gingrich calls President Obama the food stamp president. That's not racist?
This chapter.
Wait a second.
Do you really think that was? Do you believe it was racist for Newt to say that the president is a food stamp president?
Well, he
Can you
wouldn't
dive
say
into
it
that?
if we could just skip it.
Whoopi tried to counter, but her points were scattered and emotional. Anne, on the other hand, remained composed, delivering fact after fact with laser-like precision. And then came the knockout punch. Isn't it ironic, Anne said, that the loudest voices on race are often the ones making everything about race? If you keep framing every issue as black versus white, how do we ever move forward? The audience erupted in applause. Whoopi, clearly caught off guard, muttered something under her breath, but the damage was done.
I'm not a big fan of Newt, so we could just skip that for a second and get to the Southern strategy. Because I've specifically disproved it. It's an absolutely liberal folklore. Republicans were winning the South since 1920. It was the outer states of the South. It was Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia.
Voting. What are you talking about? We weren't allowed to vote.
Who was trying to get them to vote? Republicans were.
Yeah,
and the first black congressmen were all Republicans. And the first black governor was a Republican.
You're talking about way back.
The Democratic segregationists were all liberal Democrats. It is a lie that they were conservative Democrats.
Everybody was a segregationist, darling. You know, basically, everybody was. White people were. It didn't matter whether they were Republicans or not.
Ask you a question.
The first integrationists.
Listen to my grandmother, who was there, who remembers what happened.
Baker, an aggressive integrationist, first Republican elected in Tennessee to the Senate. You have Winthrop Rockefeller, first Republican.
So in my view, and I have a different one from you, it looks as though the Republicans are really going against blacks, not the liberals.
No, and this is a perfect example. Yes, it is, and it's a perfect example. No, I'll explain why. Of liberals using the label of civil rights to promote a liberal cause they support, i.e. voter fraud. In fact, one of the first states in the Union to pass voter ID bills was Rhode Island, 85% Democratic legislature. And who pushed it? A black Democrat in the House, a black Democrat in the Senate. That's a fact.
As the segment wrapped up, it was clear who had won the debate. Anne's calm, fact-based approach had completely dismantled Whoopi's emotional arguments. The panel looked defeated, and even the typically loyal audience seemed to side with Anne. Social media exploded with reactions, with viewers praising Anne for standing her ground and exposing the flaws in Whoopi's arguments. One comment summed it up perfectly. Whoopi didn't just lose the debate, she lost the narrative. Ann Coulter came with facts, and The View wasn't ready. What do you think about Ann's takedown of Whoopi? Did she make valid points, or do you think Whoopi had a stronger argument? Let me know in the comments below.